Good evening. The evening overview of the events for May the 9th, the news of television company Ostankino begins with that of greatest significance. Congratulations on the holiday to those whose valor and courage became a pledge of great victory. That victory of 1945, which forever will remain one of the main events of history. Happy holidays, dear veterans. They are the victors. We owe them the peace of almost 50 years. And this 49th Victory Spring, the veterans celebrate in the traditional square near the Bolshoi Theater in the Gorky Park. The men who hadn't yet lost the military poise and their women, comrades in arms dressed in 1950s style, convened here with great-grandchildren. Unfortunately, people who know this day not through textbooks and films become fewer and fewer. And again, each year they greet fewer and fewer of their fellows in arms. But yet not everyone could come. Yet those veterans who gathered in Moscow rejoiced at the reunion, sang songs of their youth at the front, danced and remembered the war, which firmly bound the lands and people of this country with one suffering and one joy of victory. The journalists didn't ask these people about their political preferences today, but simply left the veterans alone with their victory and memories. No matter what is said or written about this event, it will still remain the great victory of a great people. Congratulations to the veterans of war and combat services were sent by President Yeltsin today, emphasizing that we're all indebted before these people. The president promised that the Russian state will do everything possible to make their lives easier and pay its debt of great respect for their immeasurable, lofty accomplishment for the homeland. He's buried in the shroud of the earth, but yet he was only a soldier. These are lines of a poet dedicated to each of the millions of Russians who sacrificed themselves to save the native land. Today, the president of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, placed a wreath on the tomb of the soldier who defended the homeland. Now there's less than a year remaining before the half-century anniversary of the victory of Soviet forces over fascist Germany. Today, the president of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, speaking at the opening of the Memorial Building of Glory in the nation's capital, emphasized that Russia is undergoing a period when political stability is approaching, when there's a basis to calmly, at dialogue tables, resolve all the accumulated problems of our society. The feat of our fathers and grandfathers must become an example for the heirs of the great victory. The last years were especially difficult for us all. It was very easy to be overcome, but we withstood, and to a great degree thanks to you, dear veterans, thanks to your wisdom, your valor, and stoic determination, thanks to the fact that you know the true value of peace and have renounced hysteria, panic, and cheap demagogy. I don't doubt that the veterans in the future will continue to firmly defend stability and civil peace in Russia. The Memorial Building of Glory on Mount Poklonная is the history of a heroic feat of the older generation of Russians of the Great Patriotic War. The grateful descendants will remember the price was paid for the victory. The president and head of the government of Russia, together with veterans, became the first official guests in the Central Museum of the Great Patriotic War on Mount Poklonная in Moscow. All the protocol strictness of the ritual after the greeting of the president with the guard of honor in the entrance of the museum somehow melted into the human memory and grief for those who perished. Pride and joy are simultaneously one for the common victory which came to us in spring of 1945, and again, as in 1945, into the Hall of Glory, the banner of victory is carried, and it will remain here as eternal and the most revered exhibit of the museum. Mothers who lost their children in the war, through their hearts so much grief passed, their hearts and eyes cried so many tears, receiving burial notices, and yet continuing to wait. Flowers from the president and the head of government of Russia, their eternal love and remembrance of the devotion and bravery without which this victory would have been impossible. The memorial is still being built. Much is to be done, but after today's celebration, it's clear that Mount Poklonная will always draw to itself, like a magnet, all those who cherish the memory of those who didn't return from the war and those who survived. Just as this linden tree planted in the Victory Park by the President of Russia and the veterans of World War II. For age is eternal, for many years may their memory live. And about one more noteworthy event of direct relationship to today's bright holiday, the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, issued a decree pursuant to which the Because of the outstanding accomplishment of Marshal George Zhukov, an order and medal are instated in his name. In the capital, a monument will be erected to the outstanding commander. The holiday of victory is celebrated today throughout Russia. In Petersburg, it began with the laying of wreaths at the Piskaryov Memorial Cemetery. In Murmansk, in the festive parade to the Memorial of Defenders of the Polar Region, Andrei Kozyrev participated. In the Crimea, Victory Day coincided with the 50th anniversary of the deliverance of Sevastopol from fascist invaders. The 9th of May, 1944, the entire country holding its breath awaited news from the Crimea. There, for the third day, our forces were forging their way towards Sevastopol. On the 7th of May, launching a desperate attack, success was achieved. Finally, midday on the 9th of May, in loudspeakers, suddenly the announcer's exuberant voice was heard. This is Moscow speaking. The forces of the 4th Ukrainian Front, with the support of the massive attacks of aviation and artillery, as a result of 3 days of offensive combat, have penetrated the strongly fortified, lengthy defense line of the Germans, consisting of 3 walls of steel concrete defense installations. And only a few hours ago, by storm, they have overtaken the fortress and the most strategic military base on the Black Sea, the city of Sevastopol. This was Sevastopol as seen 50 years ago by its deliverers. In 1941 and 42, German aviation threw onto the city as many bombs as the Allies' aviation dropped on Europe during the entire first half of the war. At the moment of deliverance in Sevastopol, only 3,000 residents remained. 95% of its buildings had been destroyed. Who would have thought that 50 years later, the children of the soldiers of 44, freeing Sevastopol, would bargain and speculate with this land, that Russians and Ukrainians on whose bones Sevastopol stands would stoop so low as to attempt to divide and rent to each other the graves of their forefathers. Let us at least today stop and think. What are we dividing? In whose name? And for what purpose are we ripping and shredding the live fiber of our memory, our pain and conscience? And again, let us bow to those who 50 years ago died for our sake, that we should never know what war is. Our current days especially emphasize the essence of today's holiday. Those who held victory in 1945 today possibly could adhere to various views and live in various countries, but the day of the 9th of May was and will remain the same for everyone. In Tajikistan, the day of victory was declared by decree of the Supreme Soviet a non-working day. In the Dushanbe Park of Victory, a festive requiem gathering took place. In Bishkek, the holiday is commemorated by a peace run in which Askar Akayev also chose to participate. In Georgia and Armenia, the 9th of May is a working day, but even in these republics, they celebrate victory and lay wreaths to tombs of the fallen. In Brest, the main celebration today were held on the square of glory and strength of the hero, by the walls of which the first firing border of the Great Patriotic War passed through, and later the expulsion of the enemy was accomplished. Soldiers of more than 30 nationalities and ethnic backgrounds of the former USSR clashed here as one body, and the feat of the invincible garrison is indivisible today. 1,500 congratulatory messages on the Victory Day left Brest throughout the entire Commonwealth. And now, with success, one more search has ended. On the memorial plaques, instead of the words, "the unknown," names appeared. Sergeant Belov, Ivan Grigoryevich, born in the Tulsk district, and the private Vladimir Fyodorovich Simakov from Stalingrad, who, for 50 years, were considered to be missing in action. This is also a victory over the turbulence of our days and time, and in the name of the hope of the former and current generation. Kiev hasn't been so beautiful and triumphant in a long time as it is today. Holiday banners squeezed out, even foreign language commercial advertisements. Truly, in Ukraine, Victory Day is probably the only celebration which one could truly call a national holiday, when it is commonly celebrated by people of all generations and official authorities, higher and truly, with rare exceptions, local authorities. In the capital of Ukraine, traditional ceremonies took place, marches, laying of wreaths. As previously on this day, endless is the flow of people to the eternal fire. Live flowers have covered the tombs of soldiers, the emancipators of Kiev. With the Day of Victory and Memory, which coincides with the Day of Memory of the Reposed, were widely celebrated in Moldova. By 10 o'clock at the Memorial Glory Square in Chisinau, tens of thousands of citizens gathered to the sound of the presidential orchestra in an atmosphere of deep honoring of those who are no longer with us. The higher authorities of the Republic, representatives of political parties and movements, members of the government, laid wreaths and flowers to the eternal fire of the heroes. The memory and respect to the fallen has no nationality. Therefore today, here were all those for whom this memory is dear and those who desire peace on this land. Today, leaders of the Republic arranged a reception for all the veterans of war living in Moldova. Today in Riga, to the tomb of the Soviet soldier, the emancipator of the city, came employees of the embassies of Russia and Belarus and the command of the Northwest Group of Armed Forces, veterans of war, representatives of society. They honored the memory of their fathers and grandfathers, their military comrades. Wreaths were laid by ambassadors of Russia and Belarus, Alexander Hranik, Valentin Velichka, the commander of the forces, Lieutenant General Leonid Mayonov. During last years in Latvia, the Day of Victory was not celebrated as a statutory holiday, but in human memory it remains. At cemeteries and common graves, people honored the memories of casualties at the fronts of the Great Patriotic War and during times of peace. There is not in Uzbekistan a single house which was not affected by war. Here they remember war and hold sacred the memory of those who fell fighting for their homeland. In the memorial building and the eternal fire, the common graves, chains of people stretched out. Flowers to the tomb of the unknown soldier and the monument of the grieving mother. The president of Uzbekistan, Islam Karimov, laid flowers. On the eve, in the press, a decree of the head of the state was published to award those who were in the war with fascism and rear services with medals instituted in Uzbekistan for the very first time. Tashkent, as many Russian cities during the years of war, was our reliable rear. And today, in such cities in Russia, they remember not only fallen compatriots, but those who provided victory by peaceful labor. In the history of this peaceful resort city, there are special lines connected with the great victory. Some of them are such signs on buildings of sanatoriums and boarding homes. The All-Soviet Healing Center, which during the years of the Great Patriotic War, the largest hospital base of the country, restored to health and returned to the front 500,000 troops. Those who died from their injuries are buried here in the common tomb. And today, to honor their memory, together with Sochi residents from various centers of the Soviet Union, came relatives and friends to lay wreaths to the memory of the fallen and giving military honors to the defenders of the homeland. Participants of the glorious meeting gathered later by old tradition in the improvised prefrontal atmosphere to sing songs and reminisce reminisce over their combat youth, and again about Moscow events connected to the holidays. Today in Moscow, there was one more demonstration held by the Russian opposition. According to law enforcing organs, there were 10,000 participants in the demonstration. About the Day of Victory, the participants didn't remember. Obvious evidence of the fact how diversely one may celebrate the Day of Victory was the march and demonstration of the opposition. Russian Communist, Labor Russia, representatives of the Movement of Rebirth and Union of Russian People walked today from Tverskaya Street to Lubyanskaya Square, and to honor the memory of the fall in the war, for them, one moment of silence was sufficient. Later, the improvised tribune was used to complain against the authorities and state their own political preferences. Alexander Rudskoy called those who gathered to join his new movement, the Sovereign Power, so that the next 9th of May could be celebrated with the victory of the anti-national, in his opinion, regime. Saja Umalatova sang his traditional song about restoring the Soviet Union, but her original proposal to support Nikolai Ryzhkov at the next presidential elections didn't evoke enthusiasm from those present. There was nothing surprising about the fact that for Stanislav Terikov, heroes are not only veterans of war, but participants of last year's turbulences. Despite the fact that expectations of excesses were not justified, one must note the ever-increasing tendency of opposition toward expressive rhetoric and their strange desire to brandish with shame those same veterans who at this moment gathered at Mount Poklonne. Monuments, as people have their own destinies, and this monument has its own fate. The monument to the two-time hero of the Soviet Union, Marshal Ivan Stepanovich Konev, was erected at one time in Krakow on the initiative of the local coal workers in memory of the deliverance of the city. But in Poland, unfortunately, there are people who prefer to cast into the past into oblivion, even these people, just as in our country. Then the residents of Kiev decided to transport the monument to their own city. In the advent of Victory Day, a second unveiling of the monument to Marshal Konev took place. These May Days are celebrated in Western Europe as well. Festive ceremonies on the occasion of Victory Day in World War II are underway in many European cities. The tomb of the unknown soldier at the Arc of Triomphe in Paris is holy for all local French veterans, where 2 times a year, on the 11th of November, on Armistice Day of World War I, and the 8th of May, official ceremonies of laying of wreaths are conducted in memory of the sons of France who fell for her liberty. Twice in the current century, France underwent the ravages of destructive war, leaving in the awareness of the old generation deep and irrevocable pains and traces. The 8th of May is the day for the final deliverance of France and European people from the Nazi yoke, the physical and spiritual enslavement, says the 80-year-old veteran Elie Richet, a member of the Committee of the Eternal Flame near the Arc de Triomphe. Naturally, therefore, our desire to celebrate annually this bright feast of deliverance and victory. And one must give credit to the French veterans. They never forget the decisive contribution of our troops in the victory over the common enemy. On the Sharsk cemetery, there are 440 Soviet soldiers resting. Of the 145,000 who fell delivering Czechoslovakia, there are fewer who remain alive, who remember this May Day, which was penetrated with the smell of gunpowder and blooming lilac. They remember how the Czechs greeted their brothers, liberators. Hymns and slogans may change, even names of countries, but not the feelings alive in the heart. Today, wreaths to the monument at the Shana cemetery were laid by the employees of our embassy, other Russian institutions in Prague, representatives of several republics of the CIS, and also Czech armed forces, headed by the Commander-in-Chief General Nik Vasilov. The festive prayer to the memory of the casualties. This is our common celebration, says General Irzenik Vasil. We'll always honor the memory of the soldiers who brought freedom from fascism. Today in the Russian embassy in Prague, at the reception on the occasion of Victory Day, in attendance were the President of the Republic, Václav Klaus, the head of the government, Václav Klaus, the members of the Cabinet Minister of the Czech Republic, leaders of political parties, science and culture activists. One more important date connected with the war will be celebrated in the near future. 50 years ago, on the 6th of June, 1944, Anglo-American forces landed in Normandy. The anniversary of the opening of the Second Front was the reason for preparing magnificent festivities with the participation of representatives of many countries. 2 former dates of the Allies landing in Normandy, the 40th and 45th anniversaries, were conducted in a major tone, but without excessive pomp. And the largest part of society, after the announcement of the government program for national celebrations this summer, expressed doubt that should one note such a weighty event with excessive bravado, and at times in a trivial tone. In the lists of official events are a beauty pageant under the name Miss 1994, 6-hour dance show in London Theatre Albert Hall, where usually ballet and opera prevail, and planned is also a demonstration in Gloucester and Hampshire, and also a contest among chefs of military kitchens. Opposition indicates that conservatives using great funds seeking votes of sympathizers on the eve of the Euro-Parliament elections, which could either weaken or strengthen the ruling Conservative Party. Will the Russian veterans be invited to the June festivities? The answer, alas, is negative, although many British veterans sincerely feel that their safe return home is owed to Russians on the Eastern Front. 37,000 Englishmen died at the opening of the Second Front in June of 1944. All the fallen were united in one war against a common enemy, and the star of the front days gone by, Vera Lynn, who could be compared to Claudia Shulshenko, on the day of the 50th anniversary of the opening of the Second Front, again will sing the song of the Brotherhood of the Front. One day altogether will return there. The government insists that the basic 500 events will go as planned. Their culmination will be national festivities and celebrations here in Hyde Park. The only problem is how to find the fine and delicate balance between the spirit of victory and the spirit of mourning. About other events, Azerbaijan, with two conditions, signed the Bishkek Protocol on Nagorno-Karabakh. This was stated by a special representative of the President of Russia's Special Envoy, Vladimir Kazimierov, to Interfax. This protocol provides for a ceasefire between the warring sides from 00 hours on the 9th of May. According to Tartas from Stepanakert, Nagorno-Karabakh is fulfilling obligations of the ceasefire, while Azerbaijani forces have been firing at the Karabakh positions on various portions of the front. Incidentally, from Stepanakert, they didn't specify which parts of the front were affected. However, they emphasized that no reciprocal action was taken by the Karabakh side. A breakthrough from Afghanistan into Tajikistan by a group of gunmen of the Tajik opposition was prevented last night by Russian border troops. During the last week, 4 attempts were foiled to penetrate from Afghanistan by heavily armed groups of the Tajik opposition, said the border troop commander of the Russian Federation in Tajikistan, Lieutenant General Anatoly Chichulin. All these attempts were annihilated with the use of artillery, he noted. Future provocations will be decisively stifled with all available firearms by the border troops, said the general. The situation which is developing around the former capital of South Yemen, Aden, where yesterday severe fighting was underway between the southerners and northerners, continues to remain indefinite. Radio Saneh informs that there is an imminent fall of the city to be expected within a few hours. However, as Radio South Yemen reported, the forces of the northerners near Aden sustained severe defeat. According to the statement of the military commander of the southerners, the elite brigade of the northerners, Al-Amalika, participating in the attack on Aden was fully annihilated. Egyptian mass media state today that despite the broad-scale combat, Yemen is still continuing to export oil, which is obtained in the Marek province. In the Rwandan capital of Kigali, armed clashes resumed between units of the rebels from the Rwandan Patriotic Front and the army units of the temporary government. In violation of the truce agreement, in several regions of the city, combat with heavy artillery is underway. Today in the parliamentary capital of South Africa, Cape Town, the first session of the new National Assembly was held, elected at the recent non-racial general elections in South Africa. As a result of the elections, the African National Congress won the overwhelming majority of seats in the National Assembly, 252 out of 400. At today's session of Parliament of South Africa, not only deputies of the African National Congress, but all parliamentarians unanimously voted for the election of Nelson Mandela as the new president. The head of state became not only the leader of the largest party, but a man of undisputable authority and broad popularity in the entire South Africa as a fighter against apartheid who spent 27 years behind bars, as a black political leader who stepped over conflicts and racism of the past and stretched out a hand of reconciliation and cooperation to the white leader, Frederick de Klerk, and other South African political leaders and parties. The elections today of the first black president, Nelson Mandela, is undisputably a historical event in South Africa. It means the birth of a new South Africa, the victory of non-racial democracy in South Africa, where power has gone from the white minority to the black majority. The leader of the African National Congress, Nelson Mandela, who on the 10th of May will be inaugurated as the new president of the country, welcomed in Pretoria the Russian delegation headed by the chairman of the Federal Assembly, Vladimir Shumeka. The Russian representative gave to Mandela a personal message from President Yeltsin, wherein, together with congratulations to the South African people with the victory of democracy, is confirmed an invitation to Mandela to visit Russia. The events in Bosnia and the crisis around Gorizhta and Brčka, where today finally UN military observers began their functioning, detracted overall attention from success in resolving another Balkan knot, the conflict between Croatia and the self-proclaimed Serb Krajina Republic. Today, while in Bosnia calm persists, the special representative of the Secretary General of the UN, Isusi Akasi, arrived into the main city of the Serb Krajina, Knin, where a series of dialogues will continue on normal normalizing relations between Croatia and the Krajina. The truce, which was signed in the end of March in the Russian embassy in Zagreb, is fully complied with by Croats, and Krajina serves for more than a month. According to the president of Serb Krajina, Milo Martic, withdrawal of troops has been completed successfully in the truce, except for 2 small provocations, is pervasively observed. Heads of the Krajina, according to Martic, will not go for talks to the Russian embassy in Zagreb anymore, where they're not pleased with many things. They agreed to meet with the Croat delegation in the Russian embassy in Ljubljana and Belgrade. In the lifeless, rocky areas of Cardona, Likia, and Dalmatia, people are tired of shooting at each other. Here, one of the Yugoslavian wars is coming to an end. 8 officers of the Palestinian police crossed the Egyptian border on Sunday and arrived in the Gaza sector. The planned entry into Gaza and Jericho of several hundreds of police is postponed, and various opinions are expressed regarding when it will take place. Israeli military sources informed that the Palestinians themselves are at fault because they weren't capable of properly coordinating their actions. The President of the United States, Clinton, announced a new policy in his administration regarding Haiti. He emphasized that the American administration will refuse its former practice of automatically returning to Haiti all Haitians without exclusion who manage on boats to reach the American coastline. According to the new practice being instituted, all newly arriving Haitians detained by U.S. Coast Guard, consultations will be held in order to determine which of them left Haiti because of political persecution. Secondly, Clinton said, Washington is striving to institute more effective sanctions against Haiti. According to him, the crisis in Haiti is a challenge to the national interests of the United States. In the international airport in Miami, the pilot of the Cuban airline Cubana completed an emergency landing. The request was taken by dispatcher services as a signal that the liner is in the hands of a hijacker. After the plane landed, FBI agents established the following. Approximately 1 hour after the fact that the 2-engine plane left the airspace of Cuba, the pilot locked himself in the cabin and changed the course. The second pilot, with a screwdriver, attempted to open the door but was unsuccessful. After landing, he made an attempt to attack his colleague. The FBI representative, Paul Miller, stated that the pilot is detained and has requested political asylum. Bulata Kudjava today is 70 years old, and long before the evening in his honor began, on the Trubne Square, people began to gather. Today they came here out of love to the art of a man whose name itself personifies the era in national culture. A Kudjava, of course, is one of the more bright representatives of those who we with trepidation and sadness call the 1960ers. Of his poetry and songs, many generations of people are reminiscent, and therefore among those who in the auditorium and couldn't find their way into the School of Theatre of Contemporary Plays, one could meet older people and those who were much younger. Probably in this life, nothing is in vain, and even the greatest wisdom of fate is in the fact that each year for almost half a century, the birthday of our great contemporary coincides with the great celebration of victory, the same, which for all of us is the same. For all those who with Bulata Kudjava went through the war, those who commiserated with him in the atmosphere of the 1960s, those who love and know his works today in our difficult 90s, and those who will definitely read his poetry and sing his songs in the next millennium. And again about the main event of the day. According to tradition, the day of the 9th of May will end with a festive salute. In a few moments, with 30 artillery shots, the sky of Moscow will be illuminated and 15 other cities of the country. The majority of us are home with our families, and again we'll remember those who fell in that war and congratulate those who fought, and of course each other, with the victory celebration. Probably each one of us, sooner or later, and also expressing ourselves in the words of the poet, will look back on his life when our fathers and grandfathers, victorious in World War II, are reviewing their life's results. I envy them. They can be reassured that their life was not lived in vain. Thanks to their victory, it acquired a high meaning. They believed that they would win, and they did win. We very much need that faith in victory and the triumph of good over evil would be shared by all of us, large and small citizens of Russia, especially on this holiday. Oh well, a holiday is a holiday. It's in the soul and on the streets, everywhere. And thanks for building such a wonderful structure, a monument to the war. We'll be remembered for many years by our children and by our grandchildren. Thank you. Veterans, again, they return today to the unforgettable days of war, when there was nothing tastier than soldiers' gruel from a field kitchen, and nothing sweeter than the 100 grams of rationed sugar. Let's drink together with them for victory.
Все. Теперь можно. И чайку попить. Вот и сахарок. Ну, очень интересная газета. Недорогая подписка в любом отделении связи.
Это Россия. Это совокупное достояние России. Это мы. Это 160-миллионная часть достояния России. Твоя часть. Твой ваучер. Как распорядиться ваучером? Тем более ты не один. Что дает вам уверенность в будущем? Стабильность или шансы? Мы были вчера. Мы есть сегодня. Мы будем завтра. МММ Инвест.
Сегодня в бизнес-центрах всех столиц мира работают самые преуспевающие компании. И вот в Москве первый ваучерный фонд создал международный бизнес-центр. Сотни иностранных компаний будут работать на вас. Если вы купите акции МБЦ, их успех станет вашим успехом.
Happy Victory Day. Hello, television company Ostankino, from above, literally. I invite you all to make this air journey over the festive, athletic Moscow, which truly this day has become a giant stadium. Not only in spirits do veterans stay young, the eagle eye and the firm hand of Ivan Vasilievich Vilkov, and he was a participant of the Great Patriotic War, and he's 83 years old. From the stadium erected at the factory Red October, the common Olympic channel in the Krylatskaya, here the day is celebrated by the academic rowing masters. Again, we'll take a tour by car along the roads in curiosity. With good roads, we still have a problem since the days of the writing of the infinite works of Ilfen Petrov, and this auto tour really deserves attention. Participants of this automobile marathon must cover hundreds of kilometers. This is the joint project of the two Russian firms, the Moscow automobile plant Zilka and the East Bank. This truck will replace, I think, in all agricultural industry, heavy vehicles which use a lot of gasoline, and therefore we'll be able to economize. The more we economize, the better we'll live. Well, good luck to you in this automobile race. Its organizers, the East Bank, the aim of this race, why did you undertake this? Because it's necessary for people. Today in Russia, the average entrepreneur must be uplifted. Farmers who work in repair shops, small stores, and this vehicle is for them. We wish luck to participants in the race and look at the main event of the week. Hockey players of Canada, after 33 years, have become world champions. In the match with the Finns, where victory, to be just, must be 1-2, only one team could be called champions. The Canadian captain, Rob Deal, was not mistaken. We'll congratulate Canadians and return to Moscow again. Peace and agreement. These were the themes of all athletic events in our capital, including on the Olympic Prospect, where the semi-marathon took place. Don't be surprised to hear me here at this Olympic marathon with all my medals. I came here to the competitions to support our athletes. We need to make our nation strong as it was before, and this is our concern now. Everything, or almost everything, which happened today in Moscow is in our special program at 2300 hours on Channel 1 Ostankino.
Отраслевые министерства, областные администрации и финансовые компании к реализации программы безналичных расчетов с внедрением банковских векселей «Тверь Универсал Банка». Основная цель программы – разрешение кризиса неплатежей. Контактные телефоны в Москве 292 47 00, 274 03 56, 274 03 11, 330 45 62. Тверь Универсал Банк.
Хлеб – неприходящая ценность. Приобщайтесь к вечному бизнесу. Мини-пекарни «Добро хлеб».
У молодых все ветер в голове. Со всех сторон ругают АО МММ, пугают крахом, пророчат банкротство. А им все танцы, тихоньки да хахоньки. И о чем только думают. Игорь, Юля, вы хоть читали, что про ваши акции в газетах пишут?
Был бы плохое дело, не было бы плохих статей.
На свечке все хорошо.
И то верно, пусть ругают. АО МММ.
Первый пенсионный фонд. Участником становится каждый россиянин от ребенка до пенсионера.
Good evening. Happy Victory Holiday to you. And now information of the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia about the weather for tomorrow. The northwestern areas of the European territory of Russia will find themselves in a zone of atmospheric fronts. Therefore, in Murmansk, Arkhangelsk districts in the central areas of the Komi Republic will be partly cloudy and some rains. At night, the temperatures will be +1 to 6, during the day 7 to 12. The anticyclone, which has formed in the cold Arctic air, will influence the weather in the northeast area of the Republic of Komi. It will be partly cloudy, the winds are weak, but cool during the day from 3 to 5 degrees. An area of high pressure has placed itself over the central areas of Russia. Expected as partly cloudy skies without precipitation. In the morning, thick fogs are expected. At night, +2 to 7, during the day 12 to 17 degrees. The Volgovyatsk area, in an area of a lethargic, weakening cyclone. Brief periods of rain will occur. During the day, they will cease. At night, the temperatures +3 to 8, during the day 12 to 17 degrees. In the Kaliningrad area, in the Baltic countries, a summery, sunny, dry day, 17 to 22 degrees above zero. An area of low pressure will preserve its influence over the southern areas of Russia. As previously, it will be partly cloudy. In the Krasnodarsk area, on the lower Volga, in places there will be brief rains and thunderstorms are possible. At night, +7 to 12, during the day 18 to 23 degrees. In Belarus, Ukraine, and Moldova, partly cloudy, basically without precipitation. At night, it will be 5 to 10 degrees, during the day 15 to 20. In Armenia and Georgia, partly cloudy skies, brief periods of rain and thunderstorms. In Azerbaijan, it will be more cloudy and the rains will be more lengthy. Day temperatures in the Baltic, in the beyond the Caucasus countries, 20 to 25. Tomorrow in Petersburg, it will remain partly cloudy with very weak winds. At night, 4 to 6, during the day 18 to 20 degrees. In Moscow, partly cloudy, winds are also weak. At night, 2 to 4 degrees, during the day 14 to 16 degrees. All the best to you. Goodbye.